Hello, everyone, and welcome to Fantasy Football Scouts Sky Sports Gameweek 3 preview with myself, Luke Williams, and Niall Murphy. Niall, how are we doing?
We are doing good. It's been another really strong week, and I'm looking forward to talking about it with you. Although I can't imagine there'll be many transfers to talk about this week, given that we're now more than halfway through the pre-overall period.
Yeah, indeed. I honestly, I don't know if I can remember such a strong start. There was one season, and it was a long time ago. Sky messed something up, and basically you could only have whoever you picked as captain on the first week was also your captain in game week 2, but they didn't tell anyone that, and you couldn't change between the days. This was right in the very early days. I think it was the debut season of David Silva, because basically I put the armband on David Silva because Man City had a really good game in game week 1. So I think he only got like an assist or maybe just a goal, but he also got man of the match, and basically no one did anything. So that was lovely. And game week 2 was a really tough game, so I wouldn't have captained him if I knew it was going to be game week 2 as well. However, it was like Liverpool or someone they played, and he also got another assist and a goal and man of the match in that one. And I was like, I think I was third or something in the world straight away after 2 weeks, and then I was first like the week after, and then obviously it went downhill from there. But apart from that, I've never known like a start as good as this across the board. Like everyone's just that we know on Twitter has picked kind of this template-ish team, and we're all within like I mean it's bound to be close at the early stages, isn't it? But we're all right up there, like right with all the casuals who are blasting all their transfers. It's amazing, to be honest.
Yeah, it's been a rip-roaring start for most people who are engaged. Just shows, I mean, normally the value of thinking about things and engaging with the community, listening to podcasts like this pays off towards the end of the season. But for
Mm.
it to have such a huge payoff early on, like just need to check that we're not getting a nosebleed here because we could be maybe the casuals as they're talked about are actually playing the game properly this year and they're keeping their transfers. So that's why they've had a slower start. They'll be chasing us down.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's incredible the people and the scores that are being posted. You're seeing people who've got great records already in the top 1,000, some in the top 100,
Mm.
which at this stage of the season is completely unknown territory. But even if you've not had a great start, you're still going to be right up there. You know what I mean? That you're only going to be 50, 60 points off the pace, which, to be honest, when you've got 30 or 36 game weeks left, is absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, not getting too carried away, I think, is the way to look at it. And all it takes is one big captaincy like Antonio last night to go against you, and you can fall down quite quickly.
Exactly, and there's no other game like this where attention to detail and constantly being on top of it can result in rewards just through sheer quantity of games. Even if you're getting the picks wrong, most of the time you'll end up doing decent. So yeah, don't lose faith if you're one of those. But I think at one stage it was actually before the Leicester West Ham game. There was three former champions in the top 100 already, and I'm going to assume that these guys have not used any transfers because they know what they're doing, which is absolutely mad because they're obviously in prime positions now to do really good. I mean, me myself, I'm 207th, I think. Yeah, 207th. Obviously, chuffed to bits with that. In terms of my team, I'm going to bring it up on the screen here. I have had it a few times on the screen over the pods, but you can see it there. Not used any transfers, which is probably the main thing that I wanted to do this time. I think every single time since the overhauls have been introduced, I've always aimed to use either none or like one, and ended up using two or three as a result of injuries or just getting a selection wrong or something. But this time it's none, and it's going to remain none because regardless of the information, I'm just not going to make a move for 1 week now. So yeah, that's my main sort of thing that I'm happy with. My biggest gripe is picking Barnes over Tielemans, but considering my start, I can't really be too peeved. I did actually painfully work it out, and if I'd have picked Tielemans over Barnes, he only got 12 more points than Barnes so far, bearing in mind there's another game to go. I'll be 35th overall if I'd have just done that one move, which is play the safer option rather than go for the exciting attacking player. So again, I should have just picked the Sky player, the guy who gets the bonus. My thought process was Barnes can still get the bonus for the shots on target. He's one of those rare midfielders who actually can get it. So maybe I'll just go for the more exciting, explosive option. Not quite worked yet, but obviously there's still Norwich to go. Not sure whether he'll start it, but if he does, I've still got a tiny bit of hope there. So yeah, pretty chuffed for my team. What about you? Any regrets about your team or anything you might have changed differently?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm like you, although I'm not as high up the leaderboard as you are. I'm still pretty high. Delighted with the start. Like couldn't have scripted it any better. But yeah, there's still some players in there who've not done well. In particular, I've picked Buendia. in
Yeah.
midfield. I think the midfield options, right, I feel are where people have really won it or have kind of found themselves further back pre-overhaul, because I think most of the strikers that were picked were consistent. Most of the defenders that were picked were consistent. So the only place you could go for some rogue picks were in the midfield. And I've got Mahrez and Buendia alongside Bruno. And, obviously Mahrez not playing at the weekend was a kick in the balls. But then he ends up coming off the bench and scoring. Meanwhile, Gundogan, who I had in my second team, started and got nothing. But Buendia has been really disappointing. I was really, really close to putting someone like Sarr or Benrahma in, and obviously you've got Benrahma into that position. And had I done that, particularly with Benrahma, how many points he's got, it would have been a much, much better start. But I can't complain. I'm not gonna grumble. And listen, Buendia's got one more game to turn it all around for me.
Yeah, and like you say, it's only going to be a matter of like 20, 30 points at most, which is just so much time to work these back. Because even though Benrahma's been an absolute fire, the fact that I haven't captained him, it's not really that bad. I mean, I'm clicked it up on the screen here now, 24 points he's got. Yeah, that's a lot, but if you're a player like Mahrez, I don't know what he got in the end, maybe 10 or 11. It's only probably about a 15-point difference overall. It's not the end of the world, and there's still a game to go, obviously. If Mahrez starts at home to Arsenal, I actually fancy him to do pretty damn well, to be fair. So I think now there isn't really much script behind what we're going to do today, because, as we said right at the start, no one's making any moves. The general advice would be it's not worth it now. The captains, I think, are pretty straightforward for everyone. We can have a conversation about that towards the end as to who we're going to captain, but I think it's probably quite straightforward. And it's just really chewing the fat and trying to form who we think might be in our overhaul teams in a week's time, because we've got 66% of the games out the way now, so there's only really one more game that can influence us. And then we have to go with what we got, which still doesn't feel like we've got quite enough. And this is where the real differentiation will happen, I guess. I mean, in some regards, because we have fixtures laid out in front of us, there is a pathway, and there will be a template like there always is, and the teams will be vaguely close, but they'll soon start to differentiate, I think. Anything from the games that stood out, maybe there was someone for you that you thought you probably weren't going to have in your overhaul team, and then they've made you stand up and take notice. I mean, I can go first and say Antonio. To be honest, I really love Antonio. But I just thought to myself, I'm going to have him pre-overhaul because I know he's fit. After that, the fixtures take a little bit of a dive. West Ham are going to go into Europe, and then I've got no doubt in my mind he will get injured at some point, and it's basically booking in a transfer, which I spent so many on him last season, probably about 5. So I thought, I'm not going to do it. But he's been that good and looks that good that it's just like, I might have to try and fit this guy in, or even Benrahma was also in that category, like one of those two, if not both of them. I mean, we might be at the point where they've hauled again in the third game week. And suddenly, despite me not necessarily needing them for fixtures, I might feel like I have to have them. So they're certainly making me take more notice of them now. How about you?
And of course, their fixtures are still pretty reasonable after the overhaul as well. So I think, obviously, we're still a little bit out from the overhaul, a couple of weeks yet, but this is going to be, it feels like the first few weeks have been pretty straightforward. I think, making it to the overhaul with no transfers used, or even just one, is pretty rare. Normally for me, I end up using at least 2 or 3, like you said there. So we've had a really soft handshake of a start, but I think it's going to get really tough as we approach the overhaul, with some big decisions to be made about who makes your team. And the budget was quite friendly to begin with, obviously, with the likes of Simicast and some other enablers pushing themselves to the fore, and with the City options, a lot of them not being available. And Kane obviously not being there, and Lukaku just joining the league. So it was quite easy to pick a team to begin with. But I think as we approach the overhaul, you're really going to have to be smart with your budget. And I think as a result, you're probably going to see people moving away from that strict template towards something that's a little bit more dynamic. And we're going to see lots of different players who we haven't seen picked. On to your question about who stuck out for me this weekend. He was someone who I was already contemplating from an overhaul team, but now he's looking pretty much nailed on to that, is Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Took the penalty at the weekend. He doesn't normally take penalties, but he says he's spoken to Rafa and he's now looks like he's going to be the designated taker. He had 4 shots on target, 2 or 3 one-on-ones that he could have scored, and another shots bonus picked up from last week as well. So he looks pretty electric, and they've got great fixtures to start the overhaul. So Yeah, if there's one player who is really in my thoughts now, it's him from this weekend. But yeah, I think we're going to have to really think long and hard about what enablers we have going forward, because you're going to need them if you really want to get the stacked forward line together.
100%, and it's the premiums as well. At the end of the day, there's so many players. Like, I don't know how I'm going to fit them all in at the end of the day. Like Calvert-Lewin, I think he's probably going to be close to essential for most people just because of the way the fixtures are falling as well. Great games and obviously individual match days, so he takes up one striker spot. I'm going to assume everyone wants Salah, so that's another one. So you've straight away only got the third spot, which a lot of people are going to want Lukaku. I mean, I want him. Then you've obviously got Antonio, who I just mentioned, who's also a striker, that maybe you want to have him. And there's a whole other host of people that obviously you want to fit into your team that you just are not going to be able to. Bruno Fernandes. I mean, we haven't seen Kevin De Bruyne yet. I know we don't know what he's going to be offering. But it's more about these centre-backs, these really expensive ones. Like Diaz just showed again, he just Rolls Royce. I mean, he had like one bad Charity Shield game, dodgy game against Spurs, and then straight away, I know it was only Norwich, but that's what I expect Man City to be more like throughout the rest of the season. Their expected goals conceded data already, despite not playing that well against Spurs, them and Chelsea are just so far ahead of every other team again already in terms of their defensive numbers. So suddenly I want a Man City defender, I probably want a Liverpool defender, I want a Chelsea defender, and I've looked at it and I literally can't do it. Like, it is impossible unless you are going to take a risk on some of these guys like Matip or Stones or... and even then, you still have to make sacrifices or have some really cheap players in there you probably don't overly want in your team. So it's just going to be really, really tough. And I'm still not 100% sure which way I'll go. The fact that we've got an A and a B team, I might have my A team where I kind of just have like a balance and maybe just go with that Liverpool defence, for example. Just say Salah's going to be my captain, I'm just going to ignore it. And then B team, just do the classic, or I'll say the classic of recent years, which is just have Diaz, Van Dijk, all the old school people and just try and make it work. I wouldn't be surprised if come 5 or 6 weeks, that team suddenly Rolls Roycing its way to the top again just by having these guys. And that's my fear, that I might try and cut too much out of defence in order to have all these guys that I want in midfield and attack, and then and we have seen it before. Then these centre backs just end up being ridiculous again, and that was actually the way to go. So I don't know if you had any thoughts there about who's actually going to be missing out for you on the premiums, because at the moment I think for me it's probably going to be Man City and Liverpool defence, which is craziness.
Yeah, so I think this is a good segue into another conversation that I was hoping to have about Chelsea. I mean, they looked impenetrable at the back again at the weekend. Their fixtures post-overhaul are good. And under Tuchel with Mendy in goal, they've kept 16 clean sheets out of 25 games, which is ridiculous. Plus, their players are at a cheaper rate than the likes of Trent and Diaz. Does make you a little bit uncomfortable though. Obviously, there is a bit of rotation there. But in my second team, I might even just look at doing a couple of Chelsea defenders just to try and steal a march on those others. So I've got a bit of a quiz for you that I'm going to do. Right, it's not even a quiz. It's more just a poll. So I've got Chelsea's first 8 games post Overhaul. I feel like we're turning this into an Overhaul podcast already. I promise we'll look at the games coming up this weekend as well. Yeah, but I'm just gonna ask you, right? So yes or no, right? Will Chelsea keep a clean sheet? Okay.
All right, go on.
Right. Villa at home.
Yes.
Spurs away.
Probably. Yeah.
City at home.
I mean, they've done it before, haven't they? A few times. I wouldn't be surprised. I'm going to say no just because it's Man City, and I have to say no once. Yeah.
Okay, so then you've got Southampton at home.
That's a yes, isn't it?
Brentford away.
That's a yes.
Norwich at home.
That's a yes.
Newcastle away.
That's another yes.
And Burnley at home.
That's another yes. I mean, they're not going to keep them in all of those, surely. But you'd think.
But the point is, so that's probably 6 or 7 games out of 8 there that if you had to put money on it before the match, you'd say they're probably going to keep a clean sheet. So this complicates things and makes things even more difficult when you've got a team like Chelsea who are capable of keeping clean sheets but have players that are probably more rotation prone than the likes of Trent and Diaz, who also offer other things with bonus, and Trent in particular. I mean, the weekend he was brilliant. So we've got so many options now to choose from, and we've obviously got a finite budget. And we've not even come on to the big question of how you fit the uh, the, the stacked front three in of Lukaku, Salah, and Kane, whatever happens to him. So yeah, well, there's a lot to chew over as we look towards the overhaul. But
Who
I
would
think the
you
point
look
is here
to?
that
I'm going to put this to you now. Who would you look to captain if Chelsea played then? Is it going to depend on the fixture, or would you, if you've got Lukaku, could you not just captain Rudiger and just either claim the 5 or 10 points pretty much, or would you go for Lukaku most of the time and just hope that he bags a brace basically? Because with one, let's say he gets shots target as well, then obviously he's going to be what's that, 9 points is it? And if he gets 3 tier 2, sorry, he'll end up on 10, won't he? So he basically has to score and get shots on target to match pretty much what you'd say is default for a Chelsea defender.
that's it. But he's capable of that, isn't he? I mean, look at the weekend.
Yeah.
He could have scored. He could have scored at least 2, maybe 3 at the weekend, and he dominated the game, got man of the match. So he's what I would love to know, right? I would love for him to go down in the box against Liverpool for them to get a penalty this weekend while he's got low ownership, just to see if he's going to take it.
I think he will.
Because if he's on them as well, yeah. Well, if he's on those as well, then it's going to be hard to say no to him.
Yeah.
I
honestly think,
feel like,
first of all, let's say he's not on them. I think that Jorginho's missed a few recently, and people have kind of worked him out a little while. So I think even if Jorginho's on them, at one point Jorginho might miss one, and then Lukaku would take over then anyway. That's my gut feeling. But I honestly think he'd be on them anyway, just because he was for Inter, was for Belgium. He's the main striker. He wants to go for the goals, for the records. I can't see why. I'm a big fan in general in football of giving your striker penalties. I know it doesn't really work that way anymore, but I can't understand how the guy who's right at the top and is designed to put the ball in the back of the net is not the first choice penalty taker for nearly all teams. That is literally his job most of the time. I know that these forwards have other things now. They pull players out of position, they go wide. Yeah, there's other facets, but number one point is putting the ball in the back of the net, and I'd love to see more strikers take them. I don't really understand why it doesn't happen, but there we go.
Totally agree, and it's frustrating from a fantasy perspective as well when you've got someone like DCL last season who scored a bag load of goals, but how many more could he have had if he also took penalties as well? And this season it looks like he's going to be. So there's another huge option. So yeah, we're going to have a bumper pre-overhaul podcast, I think, where we can really go into this. And we're going to have some articles as well up on the Scout. But yeah, there's a lot to think about. And that's just talking about Chelsea. I would say when it comes to the question of Rudiger or Lukaku, I'd probably just have both and then captain whichever one I felt like was most guaranteed to start that game at the time. But yeah, we can certainly go through that. But I've got some other questions for you.
Go on.
People are starting to look towards the overhaul now. So let's go through some of them. So I think we've just answered this question already. So Tom SKYFF on Twitter asked, do you think that Lukaku will score 35 goals this season? Or was it just Arsenal's leaky defence?
35?
Answer is probably both.
Yeah. Arsenal's defence was very leaky. I mean, they literally set it up so they would have Mari 1v1 marking him, which I couldn't understand. 35 is a big number. He's certainly capable of it. Much will come down to how many penalties he would have got, I would have thought. I still see him as kind of... I know he could get a hat-trick any game, but I still kind of see him as like a... I don't know, 1 or 2 goals a game kind of striker. And I don't doubt he can get it, but I think 35 is a huge number. I still think it'll be worth it because ultimately he's 11.3 million. I can't see him not being valued at that price, basically.
Yeah, I agreed. I think 35 is steep, but you could get 20 odd and loads of assists as well because he's a good team player, as you've seen, and he's added that to his game more so in the last couple of years. So talking about Arsenal, smoothly switching to the next question, who do you think is the best Arsenal coverage? Because obviously we've got some potential single match days or games where there aren't many other options coming up, so you might be looking at an Arsenal player at some point, but if you had to, who would you go for?
God, it's like choosing my favourite reality TV show, this. I hate it. To be honest, I think it's still Ben White, just because he's one of the cheapest. I still think he can get passing bonus, because we haven't seen their full defence. And I just remember what Rob Holding was possible of last season, and he was kind of the go-to for the captain. So I still think it's probably him if you have to go anyone, because I just don't trust any of their forwards. Pepe's so up and down, you just have to be so lucky to catch anything with him. Smith Rowe is a decent player, but I still don't really see too much end product coming out of him, really, in terms of points anyway. I think he's really good on the pitch. And then obviously they signed Odegaard now as well, he's probably the only other one where I'd say 8.3 million, it's in midfield where you more likely want to take like your rubbish picks, so to speak. And he could do okay, but again, I haven't seen too much from him. So for me, it's still Ben White. I mean, Saka's their best player for me, but and it's a decent price. But unless he can do better than he's been doing the last couple of seasons by quite a bit, I probably still wouldn't consider him, because I wouldn't be confident that when I captain him on that single day, it wouldn't be any more than a 2-pointer. Ben White, I'm still a little bit hopeful there that he would pick up at least passing bonus, and then if they do get their clean sheet, I've suddenly got a haul, because I can't tell you where else the hauls are coming from. I literally can't tell you who else is even capable of a haul in their team. I don't see many hauls from Saka, for example. I don't see them from Odegaard or anyone like that. So Ben White or no one.
Or no, yeah, that's what I would say. I'd say preferably no one until we see something from them that makes us sit out of our seat a little bit. But I think if I had to pick someone right now, I'd probably go for Smith Rowe. If Arsenal had got a result in either of the first two games, if they'd managed to scramble a draw against Chelsea somehow against their own play, or they'd managed to get a fluky goal against Brentford and held on, I think he would have got man of the match probably in both. He does look tidy. He looks good on the ball. He looks like he can create. I don't think he's going to spew points. So this is why I'm saying that probably avoiding would be better than having anyone if you can make sure that you've got coverage elsewhere. But yeah, he's probably up there, and Ben White's probably second. So it's pretty slim pickings for Arsenal, and
I'll just throw it out that if you do go no one, because their fixtures are good as well, right? It's not just for the individual days. It's like, forget Arsenal being shocking at the moment. The fixtures are actually pretty good from Overhaul, and they've also then got the back-to-back individual days. Now we could wait until Monday the 18th of October and then bring an Arsenal player in, which I think a lot of people might do, because they probably want to just see whether it's worth it and then maybe get one. Obviously, you could just have a Palace player for Monday the 18th of October and a long time in the future have like a Guita or something in goal or something like that. I mean, that could work. And then you've got Arsenal versus Villa, where some people might have a Villa player anyway, so they might even go with the Villa player. So it's not 100%. So I don't know. I'm still tempted at the moment. Like currently in my drafts, I have got Ben White sat in my drafts, and I don't feel great about it, but it kind of covers me off later on down the line. I just don't know whether I want to suffer the games beforehand and just after. But there we go.
That's what transfers are for, mate. I mean, come on. There's no need to do that to yourself.
Yeah, you're probably right. I think it does make sense to wait until Monday the 18th and weigh it up. That's probably the way that I'll end up going. But at the moment, Ben White's sat in my draft.
Well, that's the thing. You can wait until I realise we're still 2 months out, but you could probably wait until that Monday the 18th and then bring someone in, get 2 for none with two captains, and then quickly ship them out before they stink up your team.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. So moving on, we've had a question from Saf, who's asking who you regard as essential. I suppose the first question would be, do you regard anyone as essential?
I think in Sky I probably do. I don't like it the time in any other game, but I think Bruno Fernandes is still essential, because Man United just play too many times on TV games where they're only them and maybe one other team, and I know he obviously did shocking last game, but he just offers you such an easy captain pick. So I'd say him for sure. I don't actually know if Salah's essential. I would say that you could avoid Salah and you could go the old Van Dijk, now Van Dijk's back, or Trent or something, and you could possibly do okay out of that. And the other one is the one you mentioned at the start, probably is like Calvert-Lewin. Just for the initial bit anyway. I don't think he's essential after that, but I think for the first few games, it's probably Calvert-Lewin. So I'd only say Calvert-Lewin and Fernandes. I do think Diaz, Van Dijk, all these guys are obviously god tier, but I don't know how you fit them in with all the other players that I want.
Yeah, I think we need to be careful when we're throwing around that famous E word, because the next thing you know, I could sit here and tell you that Trent, Diaz, Bruno, Salah, Lukaku, you can end up having a team full of essential players. So I think that should be a title that's retained for only the absolute like epitome of the game, like Bruno. I think Bruno probably could be. But I'm going to ask you a question. Do you think that you could cover Bruno with Pogba, who looks pretty good this year? And for Bruno's 24 points in the first two games, Pogba's got 21, and he's over 2 million cheaper. What do you think of that?
Um, right now, it looks like it's possible, but too many times over the past few years, we've seen Pogba kind of show these flashes and then either pick up an injury or there's been something in the background and then he's not played for a little while. And then obviously his position changes as well. I mean, when Rashford comes back, for me, Rashford starts in that front left forward spot because he's always started for us there, and he's like, Ollie loves him, I think, even though he's frustrating at times. I feel like that's his position. I don't think Pogba would necessarily win that position from him. So then suddenly we've got to put him in centre midfield, where, yeah, he could be better for passing bonus and stuff. But we often get overrun in midfield when that happens, unless we change to three in midfield, because him and just Matomne or him and Fred just doesn't seem to work. So with the information I have now, I'd say no. I feel like until Rashford comes back, maybe, but I still wouldn't chance it because I just think Bruno Fernandes with penalties and everything he's just dumb good. Like, even though he was really bad like last game, got like 1 point or whatever it was. He can be rubbish for 80 minutes of a game, and then suddenly in the last 11 minutes, just like points just fall out of him all over the place, like just for ridiculous stuff. And yeah, the wounds are deep when I missed him out last season, so that's probably playing a part in my decision making. But no, I think you need Bruno.
Too many sleepless nights, I think. I think if you went without Bruno, you'd end up making terrible decisions across the rest of your team just through sleep deprivation. So
probably, yeah.
I think just playing devil's advocate, I don't think I would do it either. But Pogba looks a good option, and if Man U at any point, if he continues to retain his place and they've got a great run of games, just looking post Overhaul, it looks like they've got a great run of games. So who knows? You could go both of them.
Yeah.
But again, he's a lot of money for a second midfielder, should we say, when midfield might be the area that we're trying to cut the expenses. Moving swiftly on, we've had a question from someone. I think someone called Dan Cox. I don't know who that is. He's asking about your overhaul team, but I think we're probably talking about that already. So hopefully he feels we've covered that. Next question, John Stones ?
Yeah. You go first on this one. You tell me what you think.
Right. Okay. On Stones was someone who was right at the front of my mind when I was doing some early drafts on the overhaul. I mean, I've done one or two, but yeah, the fact that he hasn't played the first two games is a bit concerning. And you know what Pep can be like with Stones in the past. He's hung him out to try and not played him at all. So yeah, I think I'm going to wait and see. Looked as if what Pep was saying at the end of the Norwich game was that the players who played well this week will play again next week, or will continue to play. I mean, how many times has he said that and it's not come to fruition? But as a Mahrez owner, that definitely got me concerned because Gabriel Jesus looked like he had an absolute stormer at right wing, and that's where Mahrez plays. But I'd need to see John Stones play a full game against Arsenal and then probably to keep a clean sheet and for him to have a good match to feel comfortable to put him in. If he doesn't play before then you can't. I'm afraid you just probably can't put him in.
Yeah.
Even though he's a great saving on Diaz.
I agree. I really wanted to have that nailed down beforehand because that was basically the way I was going to have Man City defence, was just going to chance John Stones. I think we just have to remind ourselves that first of all, Laporte was like the best player in the game before Diaz was the best player in the game at one stage. He was ridiculous for Man City as well, and he had an off season, injuries, lots of injuries, and there was rumours he wanted to leave. I think they're saying that if they get the right offer, he might leave, so that might solve the problem. But I suppose if he's playing this well and he's back to his best, then he probably does stay in the team to some extent. And with John Stones, I don't necessarily think it's like in the past, John Stones had issues where he'd mess up in a game, right? And they just would bin him off because they were just tired with him. It seemed that way anyway. But let's not forget, he also had horrific injury problems for loads and loads of seasons. He just gets niggles all the time. So I wouldn't be surprised if something like that has happened again, where he's picked up a little injury and they're just keeping it a little bit quiet, which they seem to have done in the past. So it might be that when he's just fit, he just comes back in. But ultimately, we're asking to guess Pep, and as a result, I think you summed it up there. I think you basically go, I mean, I am open to Cancelo. At the end of the day, he has played all the games so far. I do think he's going to play the vast majority of the games. He's 9.5 million, so 1.1 less than Diaz. He will miss some games, but if he plays 30, I mean, similar to last season, I think he was in the top 5 or 6 scoring defenders at the end of the game, and he probably will be again.
And he could be a good captain option as well. But the problem is, if you can't see those lineups, it does make you pretty nervous. I remember I captained him last year against West Brom away, and I think he got one of the hauls of the season.
Yeah,
25. Was it 25 points or something he got on that night?
It was something like that. Yeah, 50 captained or whatever. It was
50 captained.
Mad. Yeah,
unbelievable. Which shows that he's capable of that. But I do just worry with the likes of Stones and Cancelo. If City have a bad couple of games, you could see them dropping out the team, and then if they continue playing well after that, they might not return. Whereas Diaz is probably the first name on the team sheet, and even if they're playing badly, he'll keep his place for the whole season. So, yeah, he does. He's perfectly priced, Diaz, because he's the most expensive defender in the game, but yet he still probably offers value at that price. So
yeah,
it's a real tricky one to.
You summed it up.
Call.
It's because you can more comfortably captain him in a game when you can't see the lineup. So that's where his value comes in, because you can just put it on them and think, well, I'm going to have a Man City captain for this game, whereas everyone else is going to be sweating buckets basically. So it's that you're paying for. I mean, towards the back end of last season, Diaz didn't play a lot of games, but I think that was obviously because they were in so many competitions, and we can worry about that part later. I think it is really, you go Diaz. I think you can chance Cancelo, but it's the captain thing, like you said. If you want to use Man City as a captain, then you probably can't have Cancelo in your team. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, if Harry Kane moves, which is still murmuring, I think, then suddenly I think he solves all those issues, to be honest, and I will just have Harry Kane as my Man City option. I don't know how, because I want Kane, Lukaku and Salah up front, which means my rest of my team is going to be horrific. But I feel like that 3 will be really, really good. And I already mentioned I need Calvert-Lewin at the start, so maybe I have to go Rudiger over Lukaku, for example. It's mad, isn't it? But I think Kane at Man City would become basically the option that you would go to alongside Diaz if he came.
Yep, 100%. I think if Kane signs, you could have Diaz and Kane in that team, and then you could leave them all season, and they'd probably play 95% of the games, and they between them could haul almost every week. But they are going to come at a price. You got the most expensive defender and the most expensive striker there, and
you can move to anyone though if you need to as well. In fact, I'm going to throw one other name at you from Man City, which is Grealish. Okay. So it looks like to me, I could be wrong, that Grealish is probably going to play the vast majority of games, if not all of them. I think he's going to be in that Kevin De Bruyne mould of almost nailed. Now maybe that's brave of me, off of 2 games, but. Therefore, you're probably getting a Man City midfielder at 9 million, which is cheaper than Diaz and cheaper than Kane will be, that you could maybe just leave all season. Now, we know Grealish was fantastic in Sky in the past for Villa. What do you think of that? Do you think that is a viable option? Because 9 million's a decent price, I think. But do you just think he's going to get enough returns? That's my question, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that in a home game against Norwich when they win 5-0, he would have mustered more than just a shot. And actually, it wasn't even a shot; it just bounced off him and went in.
Yeah.
So listen, he's probably still getting up to speed, but if he is going to play that De Bruyne role, right, that kind of mercurial, dynamic 10, I'd like to see him getting threatening passing bonus, getting shots, scoring goals, getting assists, and if he starts to show that he can do that, then at his price he'll be straight in my team. But you're right. I think that for him to start both the first 2 games, after only just signing a week or so before and having been at the Euros and played in the final, that speaks volumes for the faith that Pep has in him. He spent a lot of money on him, clearly. So I totally. He's probably the third option if you don't go for Diaz or Cancelo, then he probably sticks out. And I still think Gundogan will come good as well. He's not fully fit. So there's still a plethora of options there from City, and when they've got a good run of fixtures, then you could probably do what you did last season and try and load up on them again. So I think now that we've spoken about world-class defenders in Diaz, I think we'll continue on with that theme, and we'll move on to Shane Duffy. So 6.6 million. The question from Steve: who is asking if you think that's worth a punt post overhaul, and is it worth the saving of 0.4 million on Adam Webster, who I've got on my team, and I just got to say he was outstanding at the weekend.
Yeah.
He was rampaging down that right flank. I think he got tier 2 passing bonus and tier 1 tackles in the first half. He was outstanding. But yeah, Shane Duffy 6.6. Matt, okay, I'll give you my take. I'm sure you won't mind me saying, Shane, that he was a donkey in Scotland last year. He was terrible. He was dreadful for Celtic last year. But he seems to enjoy playing in that back three, where he's got cover on both sides. He's got good cover as well in Webster and Dunk. And he actually played in the middle of the three last week, which threatened Dunk's passing a little bit. I think Dunk only just got a tier 1. Maybe, I think I'm right. Whereas Webster ended up getting over 100, and Duffy got a lot more as well. So if he's playing in the middle of the three, he's just scored a goal. They've got a good game coming up this weekend. They kept a clean sheet. He might be a good option. I'd be intrigued to see what happens when Veltman comes back. If Veltman goes back to the wing back slot, or maybe tucks into one of the wide centre back places. But I like Shane Duffy, and you've seen I think he had 4 shots in the first game. He scored in the second game. He's a real threat from set pieces. And we're going to need enablers. We're going to need really cheap defenders, and 6.6 million is good value for someone who plays for Brighton. What do you think, Ian?
Yeah, I mean, if he's playing in the middle of the three, which is normally where Dunk plays, then he got 79 passes again, so he's going to get passing in quite a few of the games. And like you say, he's a massive threat from set pieces. So I like it. I think when Veltman comes back, he goes to right wing back anyway. I think that's what Brighton fans were saying. They think he's pretty good there, and they'll move Gross into midfield. So that's probably quite likely that Duffy still keeps his spot. I think Dan Burn, the fact that he's got this rather long-term injury, I think there was noise in the media that it's still not quite right. He needs to go for scans or something. So that's positive news for Duffy anyway. So yeah, I do actually like it. I think obviously when Lamptey, if he ever turns up again, that's when the issue will come, because Lamptey will probably go to right wing back, and then Veltman will come into the back three, I would have thought, replacing Duffy, unless Duffy has just been so ridiculously good like he has that he keeps Veltman out of the team. I mean, that's maybe a possibility if we go another 5 weeks down the line. And we have been in this position before. This does remind me of the James Justin thing from Leicester, when you've got these cheap defenders who aren't necessarily in the first 11, or weren't in our preconceptions before the season started. And then they just play so well, all the other options just fall to injuries and other things happen, and then they end up just becoming like part of the first team makeup and pretty much stay there all season. So there is that in the back of my mind. The only thing I'll say is that 6.6 million, you have to work out what your exit plan is, right? And if he's just suddenly dropped from the team, you have to work out where you go. Now, there are players that are cheaper that are playing, like the Watford defenders, for example. You could go to them, but my question would be, do you want to use a transfer on that, and do you even want a Watford defender in your team? So I like it initially, but I'm still not 100% convinced. But it may come to the fact that once I build my team and I have all the players that I want, if the only way I can make it work is to have a Duffy, then I might have to do it. I might have to do it.
I like it.
Yeah. I mean, Webster for 0.4 more. It's just, if I can find that 0.4, I'd go for Webster, just because I know that he plays in their first team, like, pretty much regardless. That's where I would go, but there we go.
Yeah, and I think Webster, as you say, just gives you that he's going to be starting regardless of what happens. Whoever comes back into that team, he is first choice alongside Dunk, and then it's the third centre back, Duffy, who might be more at risk. But yeah, good option, even cheaper than Duffy are some of the Brentford defenders. And we've had a question talking about Webster. Question from Webby. He's asking about Pinnock, who's 6.1 for Brentford. Obviously, they've kept back-to-back clean sheets. They look pretty solid back there. Do you think that cheap Brentford assets could be a place to go after Overhaul? And looking at the goalkeeper Raya, who's kept clean sheets and has got save bonus as well. So, what do you think of Brentford's backline?
I mean, we're talking about these players because if we have all the players that we mentioned at the start that we want, we literally have to find these dirt cheap ones to put in. So I don't hate it for that reason, because it's what it enables you elsewhere at the end of the day. But for me, I think they've been slightly fortunate to keep their clean sheets, and the games haven't been particularly tough. I mean, you could argue the Arsenal one was on paper, but they were so lacklustre. And I don't think they'll be picking up any bonus or anything like that unless they're getting tackles. I know Aja had a lot of passes where he came from previously, but I'm not sure that's going to be a thing for Brentford, to be honest. I don't really like it. I think if you're going that cheap at 6.3, 6 point, stuff like that, then why not just go Troy-Stikong at 5.5 and just save the extra money? Because I feel like he'll offer almost similar output. And he even picked up passes the other day, which I don't see that being a permanent thing, but at least it shows he's capable. So yeah, I don't really like it, to be honest. I don't think I'll have a Brentford defender in my team.
What about the goalkeeper? Same thing.
Well, that's different. With the goalkeeper, he is at the cheapest price for a starting goalkeeper, right? And last season I had Meslier for most of it, which hurt me in a way because Martinez was ridiculous. But if you're going to have another goalkeeper that wasn't Martinez, then Meslier was probably the one to have. So I may have him. It's basically between him and the Watford goalkeeper. At the moment, he looks the better option on what we've seen so far. Pre-season starting, I would have said the Watford keeper was the better choice. So do I think now that those 2 games are enough for me to go for the Brentford one? Or do I stick to what I think was probably, what I thought was better beforehand, the Watford one? I'm not sure, but basically the goalkeeper will be that position where once I've built my team, he'll probably be the last slot I look at, which I don't know if it's the correct way to play, because I've said before, the goalkeepers are so good in Sky, and they can also offer you those individual captain days. Like if you've just got this team, you're not sure who to pick, you go for the goalkeeper who gets the 2 extra points for a clean sheet, and he can obviously get the save bonus in pretty much any game. So I like almost having the money in that position that I could go for a whole different kind of plethora of goalkeepers if I wanted to. But when you're building your team at the beginning, I don't know whether you factor that in, and I may end up with a Brentford goalkeeper. I still haven't decided. I mean, have you any thoughts on your goalkeeper? Because I still haven't got that far really.
Yeah, I think the approach that you've got of pick 10 outfield players and see what budget you've got left, and then pick the best one from what you have. I mean, when I made my first draft, I think I had 2.3 million left for a goalkeeper. So
really,
back to the drawing board. Okay, so we're moving on slightly, but we're still talking about enablers here. And I think this needs to be a new feature of this podcast. We're going to call it, I don't know what's better. Should we call it Billy Watch or should we call it Gilmour Watch? What do you think?
I need to think of some alliteration. You put me on the spot.
Okay, well let's go for Gilmour Watch just now.
Gilmour Gander. Gilmour Gander.
Gilmour. Okay, let's do that. Yeah. The Gilmour Gander.
Yeah, I like that.
Episode 1. So following on from his passing bonus that he got against Liverpool last week, which I don't think anyone really expected. He went to the Etihad and they got trashed 5-0. But when you're a midfielder, it doesn't matter because you don't lose points. And I was really impressed to see that he walked away with 51 passes against Man City away in a game where they had just over 30% possession. So looking forward at 6.9 million, I think he's surely going to be a great option if you're looking for an enabler, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had my eye on him before the season started, just because obviously he's a really good player, and I know you will have, being from Scotland. When I saw that against Liverpool, it pretty much nailed him straight away in my thoughts, and then that's just wonderful backup. I mean, if he's literally 9 passes short in the toughest fixture in the calendar, then I can't see how he's not going to be getting it in nearly every single game. So I think that's ridiculous value, really. 6.9 million. I mean, he's going to be 4. Let's say he only gets tier 1 and he gets 4 points. Maybe even picks up a yellow card, 3 points. If you're getting 3 points every week and he's starting every week at 6.9 million, that will end up being reasonable value, even at that point, I think. And I do think as he takes set pieces, he's going to pick up probably 4 or 5 assists during the season. Maybe more if you get lucky. I think he'll get any game that they win. It's either going to be him man of the match or Pookie if he's scored a brace or something. I can't really see anyone else in the team. And the right wing back, Aaron, he's decent as well. Maybe he can get it. But apart from that, I think Gilmour's just the obvious standout for me at the moment. I'd like him to be even cheaper, but 6.9 is still decent.
Yeah, totally agree. And we'll continue with the Gilmour Gander, I'm sure, when he might be featuring in some of our teams post Overhaul. All right, so moving on, I think this is probably the last question that we've got. And we may have answered it already, but this question is from Aidan. Are you planning to fit Lukaku, Kane, and Salah into your team at some point? That'd be all three.
I don't think it's possible. I think you can obviously do it and have a really, really bad defence, but I think the defenders are too good in this game, and I won't do it as a result. I will have almost certainly Calvert-Lewin, almost certainly Salah, and I have got a draft with Salah, Lukaku, Calvert-Lewin, so that's what I'm looking at the moment. And then I'd love to have the money where I could move Lukaku up to anyone above him, but I couldn't make that work. So it would have to be Salah that I would take out if I wanted to, if it were Kane or whoever. And I think I'm just going to have to play it that way. I'm going to probably keep those three for a while. Eventually Calvert-Lewin might change to someone else, for example, for a fixture run. But I think probably going to look at trying to keep Salah and Lukaku as almost permanent fixtures in there. That's the way I'm edging at the moment anyway.
Yeah. And I think what I would say to Aidan, who is actually my brother, so I'm going to say to him, use it. That's what your transfers are for. He's notoriously frugal for transfer usage, which it seems to be in the name. I'm the same. But if you've got three premium strikers like that, target the games that they've got the best fixtures and where they've got the single match days. And it might be that at any point in the season you can only ever have two of them, but you can almost just run between the three and use your transfers that way. So that's why I think, obviously keeping the transfer usage before the overhaul to an absolute minimum was so important, because they're going to have to be used thick and fast at times.
100%. And we are definitely going to miss hauls this season. Like last season, it was reasonably easy because the games were on individual days where you knew who the obvious captain was. There wasn't really much budget constraints, and you could bring that person in as long as you hadn't run out of transfers, and then obviously just captain him for that week. And it was fairly routine and fairly easy. Because there's now more games on the same day, so basically we've only got Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday pretty much at this moment, and obviously multiple games on a Saturday. There's going to be hauls missed. I mean, on Saturday you can only have one captain. You've got Bruno Fernandes versus. I'm looking at a random game week here, so game week 10's on the screen. It's just the random ones in front of me. You've got Bruno Fernandes against Leicester. You've got Man City at home to Burnley. You've got Leeds away to Southampton. You've got Liverpool away to Watford. Chelsea away to Brentford on that day as well. You could captain Lukaku, Bruno Fernandes, a Man City player, Diaz. You could captain Salah against Watford. You captain any of those guys, and you can't have them all in your team at the same time. So you are going to miss hauls, and someone is going to captain someone that you don't own as well. So you're going to get hit by a 50 or 60 pointer occasionally that has gone against you. It is going to happen. I'm interested to see it. It's going to be painful, but it's going to be exciting. At least we can now differentiate as we go forward, I think.
And that's the thing, you could probably protect yourself from missing out on those huge hauls, which probably would save you some pain in the short term. But in the long term, as you've pointed out, the defenders are just so powerful.
They'll just rake in the points all season. Yeah,
they'll rake in the points, yeah.
You'll be chopping and changing 6 million defenders as a result if you keep all those premium strikers in your team, and that's not the way you want to be spending your transfers for me. That's just going to result in pain.
Totally agree. Well, that's us out of questions, but I think now we can have a look forward to the weekend approaching. So
yeah,
Saturday, I think when we did our first podcast and we were looking at the fixtures, this was probably the day that we were having the most stress about. So now that we're approaching it, are you just as stressful? Are you finding it just as stressful as you did back then, or are you pretty relaxed about who you're going to be captaining this weekend on the Saturday?
For me, it's still. There's still the two main ones that were in my mind, and I've obviously set my team up that way. Was to either have Diaz, Man City home to Arsenal, as my only Man City coverage. I get to see the lineup, so that was in my thoughts as probably going to be my number one option. And then depending on how Antonio had started the season, obviously Antonio at home to Crystal Palace was the other one. I will have Salah in my team home to Chelsea, so yeah, I could do that, but I feel like you can maybe get away with not captaining in that one, seeing as how tight Chelsea are. So for me, it's between Antonio and Diaz. I was on Diaz before the season started, and now Antonio's been that good that I seriously contemplating just captaining Antonio in that, because I think a lot of other people will as well. So I'm still split. I'm not 100% sure yet. Which way are you going on it?
At the moment, I'm sitting on Antonio, and I don't think I'm going to move. He's been unbelievable. 21 points he got Monday Night Football, 15 points against Newcastle with a missed penalty. The guy, he looks like a man possessed, doesn't he? I think the best thing is, here he is. He's a 30-something-year-old, former wing back who's just turned himself into a goal machine. and he's great to watch. Last night, even though he hadn't scored, I think there was so he hadn't scored, but he looked so dangerous still, and you just had a feeling that something was
Yeah,
going to happen.
and
I checked my foot.
his finishing's below standard as well most of the time, isn't it? It still doesn't matter.
That's the thing. I mean, I can probably think of a couple of chances this season that he's missed that you think, how has he missed that?
Yeah.
What's happened there? There was one against Newcastle where it was just an absolute sitter.
Mm.
But he's putting them away when he's maybe not putting every single chance away, but he's going to get 4 or 5 chances a game the way things are set up in that team. So yeah, I think he's leading the charge for the captaincy at the moment. I mean, Diaz, I think, could be the safe option. You're definitely going to get 10 points out of him. I think he will get passing this time. I know he didn't get it against Spurs, but that was a bit of a blip. I think they'll get it at home to Arsenal, and if you get a clean sheet, then it's 10. But Antonio could get more than 10. No, so yeah, I think I feel more relaxed about this decision than I did way back when. I think there were a lot of people who were looking maybe to bring in Leicester assets for the Monday game against West Ham, and that doesn't seem to have gone particularly well unless you had Tielemans. But they could be considered against Norwich away as well. If you did bring someone in, it's not game over because they didn't do well in one night.
No, I still think, Vardy could do absolutely fine in that game. It would just be like Vardy, wouldn't it, to do nothing Monday night, look horrific, and then you look away and he scores a brace or 3 goals against Norwich. Wouldn't be surprised in the slightest. But I'm probably on Antonio as well. I just think that with Diaz, I'm basically let's just say he's definitely getting 10 points. He's got him in my team, so I'm losing 10 points by not captain. So am I willing to risk 10 points on the fact that Antonio can better it? I think the form Antonio's in and the fixture he's got, that's essentially, if he gets a goal, he'll probably get shots on target bonus as well, and therefore end up matching him. So do I think he can get more than 1 goal? The way he's playing at the moment, quite possibly. Now, I'm fully aware he could easily get injured and backfire, and we'll all just be sitting there going, why don't we go Diaz? But at the end, like I just said, if I'm losing 10 points, I don't think it's the end of the world. So that's currently where I'm at. For me, it's quite strange, right? Because Traore from Wolves, for example, just want to throw this out there, he possesses a lot of the same kind of qualities that Antonio does in terms of he's just ridiculously strong, like really powerful. He's obviously very, very quick. You'd argue that Traore is, if anything, stronger and quicker. They're both not the best finisher in the world. Antonio's a lot better than Traore, I would say. But Antonio finds a way to convert these things into points. I feel like you just really want to shake Traore and go, look at Antonio, look what he's doing. Surely you can get even close, because his physical attributes are even on another level than Antonio's, I would say. And it's just so frustrating that he can't turn that into points, because this is a complete tangent from Sky, but I just feel like he should mould himself on Antonio. Antonio is a lot older than him as well, right? I just feel like there's still a player somewhere in there in Traore, but if anyone can find it, I don't know, because he's just baffling how he manages to miss so many chances all the time. It's just not good at football, which is a problem when you're a footballer.
Well, there was that spell when Nuno was there. I think it was about 18 months ago.
Yeah, like 6 weeks.
He went on 6 weeks, 7 weeks. He was scoring every week, getting man of the match. There's rumours that Spurs might be back in for him with Nuno. If that happened, then maybe he would find something. But yeah, he's incredibly frustrating. The difference probably is with Antonio, he plays right through the middle, and so
but he's
just causing so many issues.
He's been having under the new manager, he's had so many chances in the box, a lot of chances. I know Jimenez is right up there, but it seems like the chances are falling to Traore the way they're playing, and Jimenez is dropping. It's even in terms of their build, right? They're obviously quite strong, quite stocky, but they're all also pretty short, considering how powerful they are and the unreasonable low centre of gravity for who they are. So, yeah, just something I had in my mind where maybe Traore one day can turn into Antonio, but at the moment it looks a long, long way off. I'm not even sure how much he is, because their fixtures are really good, Wolves, after Overhaul, so that's why I bring it up more than anything, is that...
You've taken the words right out of my mouth. That's exactly what I was going to say, and I'm firing through the app right now to check how much he is. I'm sure
7.9, here we go, I've got him in front of me. So he's really cheap, and he's pretty much playing up front for Wolves as it stands. So if he doesn't move to Spurs... where we want to take punts is probably our midfield. Everyone's probably going to be thinking they're going to have Ben Rama at this point. I don't know whether I'll keep with Ben Rama. I honestly don't know, just with Europe and stuff. I feel like he's been good, but I do think there's been quite an element of luck, to be honest. I don't know how much you can keep that up. And I do think he offers a little bit of an alternative. So I'm considering it. No doubt that's going to hurt me, but the thing with Traore is he's probably going to be man of the match in most games that he starts, even if he misses 8 open goals, because he just catches your eye every time he gets the ball. So I do think there's something there maybe.
There aren't many players in the game who could get man of the match in a 1-0 home defeat, and he got it at the weekend. So I think that probably sums him up. He's going to be really frustrating, but yeah, I think if he can show something, then maybe just post Overhaul is another pretty cheap option for us to put in. So we've talked about captaincy on Saturday, and then Sunday. Yeah, if you had Traore, like the 1.4% of the game who have him, you could captain him at home to Manchester United. But it looks like Bruno is going to be the main captain there again. I think I'm going to be having him, and I'd be surprised if you don't as well. The other games, Burnley against Leeds and Tottenham against Watford, a good number of people must have brought in Son. Didn't get the returns against Wolves. Apparently took a knock in the warm-up and then didn't take the penalty, which must be frustrating for anyone who did bring him in. But if you've got him home to Watford, I think a lot of people will probably be going back to Son there and captaining him. So yeah, Bruno for you, I assume.
Bruno for me, yeah. I don't have any other options. I mean, Rafinha's looking really good. I think he's going to do really well against Burnley. I'm still annoyed at myself for picking Barnes when my options were either to go Tielemans or Rafinha. They were the two other ones I thought I'll just leave either of those in because I just think Rafinha's fantastic. But I was hoping with the fixtures, it wouldn't really work out, but he's also scored well. I don't think you captain him away to Burnley though, as good as he is, and it would be Son or Bruno. If I had both, I might actually be tempted by by Son in this one. If I had, just because Wolves have looked pretty good, probably keep quite a lot of possession. They've been unlucky, and obviously just home to Watford. It's a much better fixture for me. So I'd be tempted by Son. My only thoughts are that he came off on the 70th minute for Kane as the main centre forward. So we get to see the lineups, luckily. If Kane's starting and Son's on the wing, I'd probably go for Bruno. But if Son's up front again, I might be tempted to do it, to be honest, even if he only gets 70 minutes. But yeah, Bruno for me.
Brilliant. Well, I think that's it. That's us now. Once we get past that game on Sunday, that's us arrived at the Overhaul. So hopefully our guidance has been helpful to everyone, and we'll have plenty more to talk about after it as well. I think, is there anything else you wanted to wrap up on before we move to?
No, I think that's it.
To the end.
I think that's it. Obviously, you've got an article coming out this week, I think, or next week, Niall, on some of your team and your thoughts on the Overhaul. So make sure you check that out on the site, guys. Obviously, our next pod will be probably our main one in terms of focusing on Overhaul. Again, there might be a little bit of a lull for the first few weeks because obviously we can plan for a few game weeks in terms of like strategy and stuff. But no doubt there'll be injuries. There'll be other things that force a hand. We've also got this international break, right, which we're all going to be sweating over. I know that they've come out today saying that some of these players aren't going to leave to the sort of red-listed countries, but there's always chance for injuries and new players coming back from fitness. So I'm sure there'll be lots of things thrown our way that we have to try and work out. As always, just a quick nod to the membership area. You saw me on the screen there, sort of looking at it in the background for the passing and stuff. For me, this is the best time to use it after these 3 weeks, is to go in there and look at all the data, see who is teasing that passing bonus, who's teasing that tackling bonus. Some sort of positional changes. For example, Højbjerg for Spurs, who was pretty much a darling last season, is not really making any waves in that area. It looks like there's a bit of a tactical shift. So it's stuff like that these stats can really highlight to you. So get yourself in there and get involved. Thanks a lot, guys, and we shall catch you on the next one. Bye-bye from me.
Goodbye.
Catch you later.